Good morning, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolf, Nick Wright, Brandon Marshall, Kevin Wilds. It has been a long and busy and complicated and somewhat stressful week, but it is still Friday. And as Brandon said, we look good today, which is the other positive to come out of it. We still have some
best dress goes to Jenna.
Well, thank you very much. You know, forget what I was saying. If you want to talk about how well dressed I am, I'm happy to table everything I was saying.
So we're in the middle of winter in New York. Sorry, Jenna. I apologize. Why is Wilds so tan?
No. There's a great Seinfeld line to why Wilds is tan. I refuse to use it. Might be. Hey, we start this morning in the Bay Area. A very depleted Niners team hosting a very hungry and out to prove something Packers team. Seems like a fair matchup. And to the surprise of nobody, Aaron Rodgers feasted on the opportunity. 305 passing yards, 4 touchdowns for him. And how about this? 10 catches, 173 yards for Davante Adams. Packers win. Packers improve to 6-2. So, Brandon, was Rodgers and Adams' big night against a very depleted Niners team? Was that something or was it nothing?
Depleted, decimated. Jimmy Garoppolo out of there. You got the tight end. Kittle, out of there. Raheem Mostert, out of there. 3 wide receivers, out of there. Trent Williams, out of there. Go to the defensive side. Nick Bosa, D4, out of there. Richard Sherman, out of there. And so many more guys. So, yes, it was nothing, Jenna. Did they play well? They played phenomenal. Great job getting back on track. But at the end of the day, it's nothing. They had $80 million of cap on the sideline. So, this is nothing, but it does mean something in that locker room, just getting a win, just going out there, touching the ball, making a few tackles. But, Nick, I don't know how you see it, but if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I'm looking at it like, maybe in 2 weeks when we play somebody, it could be something.
So I mostly agree with you. Here's why I think it is kind of something. Because while there was not much to gain for the Packers yesterday, there was an immense amount to lose. If they lost that game, given the Niners' injury situation, it's an unmitigated disaster. And I would argue, if they do anything other than what they did, which is roll up a 34-3 lead and then coast the rest of the way, if that's even a 10-point margin in the fourth quarter, I think people are like, ooh, what's wrong with the Packers? So while they had nothing to gain, they had a lot to lose, and it is something that they didn't lose it. But the other thing that I think is something is what Davante Adams did last night and what he's done this year. The dude's played 5.5 games. He's missed 2 and he got hurt during one of them. But I think he leads all receivers in fantasy points. Now, I don't really care about fantasy, but it speaks to his wild production. Wilds, there have been 15 games in the NFL all year where a wide receiver went for at least 150 yards. Davante Adams has 3 of them by himself. And I know he's Aaron Rodgers' favorite target, and I know Aaron Rodgers gets most of the credit. But Davante Adams, I feel like, is kind of flying under the radar a bit as a guy who maybe should be in the discussion as one of the 3 best receivers in football. He's certainly one of the most productive receivers in football, Wilds.
So he should be. After the game, he says it's fair to say I'm the best wide receiver. And it wasn't like a wildly conceited statement. That's just the facts, and the numbers bear it out. So not only did he have a ton of yards and he leads the league with 8 touchdowns, he also had this 4th and inches play, which just is like an amazing call. Like 4th and inches, what are we going to do? Like, let's throw the ball to Davante Adams. So Brandon, I know you said that this game was a lot of nothing because the Niners had everybody out. But to me, I don't think that takes away anything that Davante Adams did. Like, he keeps on piling up these yards per game. Here they are, top 4. And this really works perfectly. Very rarely do stats line up so perfectly with the way the world actually is. Here it is. Davante Adams, number 1. DeAndre, number 2. Julio Jones, number 3. And your buddy DK Metcalf, number 4. Those are the top 4. There's no outliers, nothing weird going on. Just the top 4 wide receivers also lead the league in yards. So do you think, because they played the depleted 49ers, that somehow takes away from his stats?
No, not at all. I mean, that's his job.
Okay,
good. His job is to go out there and produce. Devontae Adams, this is no shock to people, to any of us. Devontae Adams for the last couple years has been one of the most premier wide receivers in the league. So yes, this is it's not a huge argument. He can easily go down as the best wide receiver in football right now. I like DK Metcalf.
Okay,
I like DeAndre Hopkins. There's some other guys that we need to throw out there. Even Stephon Diggs is playing lights out. There's only a handful of real #1 wide receivers. We'll get into that possibly next week. But right now, Wilds, you are dead on. This guy's playing phenomenal.
And I just want to add one other quick thing, Jenna. I think, yeah, it is a post-weekend tease. Aaron Rodgers this season, and I know you can't take out a game, but aside from the Tampa Bay Bucks game, Jenna, Aaron Rodgers this year has a passer rating of 127 with 24 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Again, we're halfway through the year. Take out one game, he has 24 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a passer rating of nearly 130. It is remarkable production, Jenna.
Except for that one game, that one team they played was a very good one in the Bucs. All right, let's talk about the Niners side of things. Nick Mullins got the start last night for Jimmy Garoppolo, and he looked okay. 291 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 turnovers in the loss. Brandon, I'll send it back to you. Did Nick Mullins' performance last night help or hurt Jimmy G's stock?
I mean, Nick Mullins' performance had nothing to do with how they're thinking about Jimmy G. It comes down to the value. You got to look at it. He's making $25 million next year and a year after that. Is he going to give you that type of production? And I would say no. And I will also say that teams are thinking about his injury history. He's injury prone. And while I know you love him, he's an expatriate. But at the end of the day, this dude is getting paid $25 million to do what? He's also on the bench half the time since he's been in the league. So I would say Nick Mullins' performance, he could have went out there and threw for 0 yards. He could have threw for 400 yards and it would put nothing in the 49ers' mind as far as how they need to move forward with Jimmy G next year.
Okay. There's a famous Hollywood story about Shelley Winters. Stay with me here. It'll make sense. And she won 2 Academy Awards. And this director wanted to bring her in and say, oh, we want her to audition. She said, okay. She went to the office and she went like this. Bingo, 1 Academy Award. Don't know if you can see it. It's a bottle of water. And then takes out her bag. Bingo, the other Academy Award. That's my audition. Here's Jimmy G's example of that. Since 2017, they are 22-8 when Jimmy G starts. And they are 5-22 when he doesn't start. So what is Jimmy G getting $25 million to do? Win games. And that's what he does. Now you can say like, the guy's got an ankle sprain. Let's just start fresh. Let's start with the kid from BYU. Why don't we put 14-year-old Arch Manning in there and see what he can do? The time is now. Jim, you got yourself a great quarterback who wins games. Unless you're playing fantasy and you're mad because he only threw a handful of passes to get you to the Super Bowl. He got wins games. That's just the Super Bowl.
Wilds, I love it, Wilds. Go ahead, Brandon.
So real quick, Brandon, you're saying the problem is availability. I'll take it a step further. I think the problem is he's not good. He being Jimmy Garoppolo. I agree with you, Brandon, in this. I don't think Nick Mullins' performance had a huge impact on Jimmy Garoppolo because I think they're evaluating him on his own outside of how Mullins looked. Now, if Mullins had played great and looked awesome, I do think it would have damaged Jimmy because it would have spoke to how maybe set up any quarterback is to succeed in that offense. But I am going to tell you whose stock was improved by Nick Mullins' performance yesterday, which I actually thought was way worse than the numbers. He tried to throw multiple other picks. He looked lost. Like, I think that if you didn't watch the game, the numbers kind of belie how bad he was. You know whose stock was helped by it? Your old buddy Kevin Wilds. Because Kevin Wildes,
great.
a couple days ago when Brandon and I were like, Mullins is fine. It's like, no, he's not. Jimmy G, quarterback wins with a Z, and he was slamming Oscars on the table. So I was watching yesterday, and I was like, you know what? The Niners look terrible. Nick Mullins looks scared. Right. And Kevin Wildes probably got his feet up in his palatial estate in Groton, Connecticut. That's where you were born. That's not where you live now. Sorry. In Rye, New York, saying, I told these idiots they need Jimmy Garoppolo. So while I don't agree with the take has aged better than my Nick Mullins take. So doff my cap to you, sir.
Nice take. Wow.